One of the most important qualities that determines a Pokemon's viability in competitive is their typing. Sometimes just a singular type is great on its own merits, like water and fairy types. But when a Pokemon has two types that complement each other and cover each other's weaknesses, they can achieve great heights. One of the most classic examples of a great type combination is Water-Ground. Water types are weak to electric, but with Ground as your second type, you're now completely immune to electric instead. Ground types are weak to ice, but thanks to your water typing, now you're neutral to ice. Pokemon with Water-Ground typing are consistently seen across the generations. And there are many more famously powerful type combinations like Bug-Steel, Dark-Ghost, and Ground-Flying. But I believe that one type combination stands out as the most powerful in the game. Only 5 Pokemon have ever been blessed with this elite type combination. Steel Fairy. Fairy types are very strong on their own, but they do suffer from weaknesses to Poison and Steel. But with this complementary Steel typing, you're now completely immune to Poison and neutral to Steel. Fairy typing also complements Steel by making you neutral to Fighting type attacks instead of weak to them. A Steel Fairy type combination grants an immunity to Poison type attacks and the Poison status ailment, Dragon type attacks, and even Sandstorm damage. On top of that, you have a whopping 9 resistances, and these are amazing resistances to some of the most prevalent attacking types in the game, including Dark, Ice, Rock, and Bug. You do have 2 weaknesses to Fire and Ground, but that's a rather small price to pay for all of these incredible advantages. Steel Fairy types have so many opportunities to enter the field and start generating value for your team. Even Pokemon that have below average stats are massively enhanced by the benefits of this type combination. Let's take a look at every single Steel Fairy type in the franchise and how they function in competitive singles. But first, a relatable situation. The beloved Steel Fairy type Pokemon Klefki was recently trying to unlock some new information for himself using Google search. He was searching for different held items he could take advantage of in battle. But in addition to this information, he was looking for more context from fellow Pokemon with hands-on experience using these items themselves. Well, Klefki, you're in luck. Google is working on expanding the capabilities of Google search to include insights and wisdom from fellow members of niche communities, including the competitive Pokemon community. By signing up with the link in the description, you can get involved with these exciting new features yourself and help to shape the future of Google search. Signing up is completely free, and you'll also help me out by taking part in this exclusive beta program. Click the link in the description in the pinned comment to learn more and sign up. And thank you to Google for sponsoring this video. The first Steel Fairy type we're going to talk about is of course Klefki. Perhaps the worst of the Steel Fairy types, but honestly even this guy is pretty solid. Introduced back in Gen 6, it has really average stats, very low health, and 90-ish defense and special defense, but even still, it's ranked in UU, and I actually think it's quite viable in OU. It has a lot of utility, the typing is really useful, and Prankster is a great ability, which grants priority to non-attacking moves. You have spikes, you can set hazards, you have Thunder Wave, so after you switch in, you can cripple speedy enemies with something really significant. Play Rough for a solid Fairy type stab move, hit Dark types, hit Fighting types, and Magnet Rise is really nice to let you become immune to Ground for 5 turns with priority. So, you could switch in on a Garchomp Dragon type attack and then use Magnet Rise and you're safe against incoming Ground type move. Klefki also has access to dual screens. So you can go Reflect and Light screen, which can be really nice to set up for boost sweepers like Volcarona, Cloyster, Pokemon like that. I also think it's pretty good in Gen 7, and you would even see this guy in Ubers formats sometimes, just because there's so many Dragon types up in Ubers. A lot of opportunity to hit the field and just make hazards, priority paralyze something important. A lot of resistances too, you can't quite one-hit Klefki. I think it's a really cool Pokemon design, honestly. I like that it has this fantastic typing, very limited stats-wise, but all this really useful utility. Really cool Pokemon overall. Up next you have Mawile, who, if you include the Mega Form, this is the worst Steel Fairy type. It's ranked down in ZU in Gen 7, I think PU back in Gen 6. It simply doesn't have enough stats to get much out of its typing. It has pretty good move pool with like Stealth Rock knockoff and such things, but the stats are too low. However, the Mega Form is incredible. Mega Mawile has really good stats. Same 50 base health, but 125 defense and really solid special defense. Huge power, which grants double attack and a solid base attack to work off. This was in fact banned back in Gen 6. It was too powerful for Gen 6 OU. It was Ubers back then. In Gen 7, it was legal with a bit of power creep in that generation. It wasn't quite the same level of dominance, but still one of the best wall breakers in that format. You have so many opportunities to hit the field and start posing a threat with this. A problem wall breakers can have sometimes is they're too frail. It's hard to actually enter the field, but what's useful about Mawile is in its base form it has Intimidate, which lets you come in, lower their attack, and then you can Mega Evolve after that into this monster. And a standard set would look something like this with Play Rough for stab and Sucker Punch for priority, Knock Off for item removal and dark coverage, but you also have options like Ice Punch. Really useful coverage for Landorus Therian. Intimidate's not going to do much when you have 1 million attack, is it? Thunder Punch too, to hit water types super effectively, and other stuff like Skarmory or Celesteela. Some fellas like that back in the Gen 7 metagame. You even get Fire Fang if you want to hit Ferrothorn and fellows like that. And this is a good showcase of just how strong the typing is. The ability to enter the field safely against common hits is really important. And with all your immunities, immunity to Toxic too, so you can't get stalled by defensive Pokemon and beat that way. So many resistances just help you come in, and then all of a sudden they're on the back foot, they're losing momentum, they're struggling to switch in. I mean, personally, when I think of this type combination Steel Fairy, the first Pokemon that comes to my mind is this one right here, Magearna. This is the Steel Fairy type to me. Back in Gen 7, when this thing released, it absolutely dominated Gen 7 OU. Steel Fairy typing allows this to check and switch in against some of the most popular threats that the game had to offer back then, like Ash, Greninja, and Clefable, Tapu Lele, and even Mega Alakazam. And Magearna was such a versatile Pokemon in that metagame. You look at all these possible sets. You have Assault Vest was my personal favorite because it was sturdy and it helped you pivot and check things more solidly. But there was more, folks. You could do a Calm Mind Win Condition bulky set with Calm Mind and Pain split to just snowball out of control with boosts. The most immediately aggressive and infamous Magearna set was definitely the Shift Gear one, which just went full-on offensive investment with stats. Shift Gear to raise your speed, and then Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, Focus Blast for really solid combination of coverage. Z-Move as well, just nuke stuff and get Soul Heart going, which raises your special attack every time you cause another Pokemon to faint. Magearna was also a staple of Gen 7 Ubers. It was able to check Xerneas and use Heart Swap as a way to counteract a Geomancer. If they ever use Geomancer, you just go to Magearna, copy all of their boosts, and you totally wall them because of your typing. It was also a fantastic check to Yveltal, because you resist both Dark and Flying Stab. Gen 7 was the only gen where this was OU legal, and from Gen 8 onwards it did end up getting banned. Many people think it should have gotten banned in Gen 7 as well. It was a very overwhelming and dominant Pokemon. I guess it does have a place though as an important check to all of the common offensive threats of the tier that would have otherwise maybe been a bit too hard to handle. It kind of held things together back in Gen 7, but in Gen 8 and 9 it was just an overwhelming threat that dominated, was a bit too hard to check. Definitely a prime example of the power that Steel Fairy typing represents. I mean, this Pokemon has so much going for it already, with such a good offensive and utility move pool, amazing stats, and a great ability Soul Heart. But the typing is the big thing that really pushes it into stellar territory. Without the typing, this would not be the absolute dominant force that it was. I've said a few times that Tinkaton is one of my favorite Gen 9 Pokemon designs, and I still believe that. I think they did a good job with this one, which is rare these days, but hey, I gotta give respect where it is due, because Tinkaton's a cool design. It has a modest stat distribution, especially by Gen 9's high standards. 105 special defense being the most notable stat, but that's nothing insane, really, by modern metrics. However, Tinkaton manages to find a place for itself. It is not only a top tier choice in UU, it has its niche uses in OU, and it has been a pretty popular choice in some metagames in the past. Tinkaton has Mold Breaker, which is a cool ability that ignores enemy abilities, so you can Stealth Rock and not be affected by Magic Bounce or Knock Off, even if they have Sticky Hold or something like that. Ignore such effects as multi-scale as well, if you want to hit a Dragonite really hard or something. Knockoff is a rarer move in Gen 9, but it's, you know, thematically appropriate and design-wise not too crazy to give it to Tinkaton. It's not like it hits insanely hard with it or is going to do anything illegal with such a move. I also like Gigaton Hammer as a signature move. It can't be used twice, has 8 PP but massive power. making up for the lower attack stat of Tinkaton. Rare instance of a high base power move that is actually like balanced and well thought out and thematically very appropriate too. I also really like a recent development for Tinkaton in OU where it has started to use its alternate ability Pickpocket, which I didn't think much of in the past, but you can run this set with Air Balloon and Pickpocket, and the Air Balloon will pop, and because of Pickpocket, if the Pokemon has no item and is hit by a contact move, it steals the attacker's item. Because your Air Balloon just got popped, you will steal their item after getting hit, which is a really cool little interaction, and a nice way to use Tinkaton as like item removal. Tinkaton was also a really cool Pokemon back in the day when Chien-Pao was running around in OU. That's ancient history now. But there was once a time where that happened, and Tinkaton was cool not only because it resists both of Chien-Pao's stab types and can actually check the thing, hitting it with Gigaton Hammer or Play Rough. It also had the benefit of being able to Stealth Rock against Hatterene, because Chien-Pao and Hatterene were a common combo. Hatterene helped Chien-Pao by bouncing Stealth Rock away so that Chien-Pao could more safely afford to run Choice Band and not be worried about Stealth Rock as much, but Tinkaton was a counter pick against both of those things at once, and Knockoff was also even more scarce back then. This was pre-DLC times before Knockoff got a bit more distribution, so anything with access to Knockoff was a big deal back then. So I really liked that little period where Tinkaton rose up to fill a little gap. That was fun, and you do see Tinkaton crop up in OU here and there, used by some good players for its really unique and cool qualities, like its typing, all this utility at once. There's real value to using Tinkaton on a team. Despite its lower power level for the modern metagame, it carves a niche for itself just purely because of its unique set of traits that are useful, and I really enjoy that. Finally, here we are, folks, at the most infamous Steel Fairy type Pokemon in existence, Zacian-Crowned. This is a Pokemon that perhaps they went too far with. Zacian-Crowned is the cover legendary of Pokemon Sword in the Gen 8 games, and it was one of the few Pokemon ever to be banned from Ubers for being too powerful, and that is an enormous deal. And it's easy to see why at a glance. I mean, even not considering the typing, look at all of these advantages we have. These stats are ridiculous: 148 base speed, 170 base attack, solid defenses. Where's the drawbacks? Where are the downsides, or perhaps the flaws of this Pokemon? It seems like a completely perfect Pokemon already. Well, there's more, folks. Look at this, Intrepid Sword. On switch-in, this Pokemon's attack is raised by 1 stage. And back in Gen 8, this is not an effect that fades away or, you know, gets removed when you switch out like a normal stat stage. Zacian-Crowned simply just has an attack boost at all times, as if its attack wasn't high enough. Also, its move pool is outstanding. It has this move, which just has a simple 100 power steel stab, 100 accuracy, really strong. It also has close combat, you know, Play Rough, Wild Charge if you need that for coverage. It also has Swords Dance if you want to just become even more powerful for fun. And then of course on top of all that, it has Steel Fairy typing, the best type combination you can get. So this thing is also amazing defensively. Usually when Pokemon are really fast and have high attack, you should give them some defensive downsides. Think of something like Deoxys Attack or Rayquaza or Kyurem Black. They have really high attack stats but are limited defensively in certain ways. Zacian-Crowned has no limitations anywhere, and it's way stronger than all of those guys and faster than them and bulkier than them, and it has all the coverage it needs in the world. This is the prime example, the poster child of power creep. This is power creep to an extent we have never seen in our lives, folks. Now in Gen 9 they did at least realize that they went a bit too far and nerfed Zacian-Crowned. It no longer has 170 base attack, it has 150 now, which is still very high, but you know, it's a bit better. And Intrepid Sword also only works once per battle, it's not permanent. So Zacian-Crowned is a bit more manageable in Gen 9 Ubers, especially because of the addition of new fellows such as Skeledirge, who is a hard counter. Also new Ubers that are even more powerful. It's not even the #1 Pokemon in Gen 9 Ubers. It is dethroned by fellows such as Koraidon and Miraidon, and of course good old Arceus and its powerful forms, but still an absolute force to be reckoned with, one of the best win conditions you can use in Gen 9 Ubers for certain. I played a bit of Gen 9 Ubers and I don't love this Pokemon's presence. I feel like it's very one-dimensional. It doesn't have a huge amount of set variety. The most variety you're going to see with this is what Terra type you want to use on it, like whether you're going to use an offensive type like Fairy just for more damage, or go flying or something, or Terra Blast for coverage. But other than that, there is not a huge amount of variety with Zacian-Crowned, as opposed to other offensive threats, but it's at least a manageable presence in the format, though. Anyway, folks, that's all the Steel Fairy types ever released. I do believe it's the best type combination we've ever seen in the games officially. There are some that we haven't seen yet that could be better, but as for ones that currently exist, Steel Fairy is, in my opinion, the best. In all of these Pokemon, even the worst end of the Pokemon are decent, like Tinkaton and Klefki. They almost have no right to be as good as they are, but they are solid anyway because of the sheer power of Steel Fairy typing. And then we've seen some of the most powerful Pokemon in existence, like Zacian-Crowned and Magearna, push to even greater heights thanks to that unbelievably good typing. Who's your favorite of the Steel Fairy types? Mine is Tinkaton. And what would you like me to talk about next? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching. And thanks again to Google for sponsoring this video.